What's going on, guys? Today I want to talk to y'all about what I believe to be the two most effective ways to fish with live mud minnows. Coincidentally, both of these ways that I fish are with floats, just two different styles of floats. So I'm going to go over the simplest one first with you, and that's just a traditional clamping float. And so what I'll do with the clamping float is I'll fish any depths from like a foot of water to about 3 feet of water. If I get above that, it's hard to cast a long leader off of a float. So I'll switch over to the slip float for that, but we'll talk about that in a second. So the clamping float's real easy. It just has this this bar in between it that slides when I push down this, and so I can clamp the bottom on and then clamp the top on wherever I want it, and then cast that. I like to use a heavier leader, not super heavy, but if I'm fishing a really light leader, I'll use a slip float. If I'm fishing a heavier leader, a clamping float's okay to use. If it's real light, this clamp, if you're pulling on a big fish, you're probably going to break the leader because the line runs around the side of it. So I'm usually fishing 15 to 25 pound, depending upon the fish that I'm targeting. So I'm going to show y'all here, and like I said, I usually don't fish a clamping float in more than about 3 or 4 feet of water, and so I'm usually giving myself about 5 feet a leader here, so about an arm span and a little extra. I'll cut that off, and I'll use my joining knot. This is going to go to my braid. I almost always fish braid on all my spinning rods in saltwater. 15 pound Power Pro Super Slick is what I use. And so I'll usually use an FG knot or a uni knot to join that to my braid. And then when I come down here, I'll tie my hook in. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you all that here. The hooks I like to use for any of my float fishing are the Mutu circle hooks by Owner. They're great hooks. This is a size number 2. And the reason I like to use circle hooks for floats is because a lot of times I'm leaving a lot of slack in my line while I'm fishing so that float can drift through an area. And that way when that cork goes down, all I've got to do is just reel up. I don't have to worry about setting the hook, and these hooks are always in the corner of the mouth. I found that other circle hooks I miss some trout bites with, but these I always catch those trout. The redfish I can kind of get away with any circle hook. So what I've done here is I've tied a uni knot, a 3-turn uni, and I'm just cinching that down to the hook. Oh, I just got the hook stuck there on my finger. I'm gonna come here, trim that tag end off. So I've got my hook here. Above my hook, I'm going to drop 1 split shot, and that's just going to depend on how quickly, the weight of that's going to depend on how quickly I want that bait to get to the bottom. But just like anything I'm fishing, I usually don't want to fish too heavy. I want to fish as light as I possibly can, but still know that I'm on the bottom. So this is I just grabbed 1 pack here, but this is a larger split shot. These aren't little tiny split shots. So I'll go about 3 inches above and clamp that split shot on. And let's say I'm going to fish about 2.5, 3 feet here. I'll come in with this bobber. This float, it's a little fancier name to call a bobber, and drop that on there so you can see it's attached to one end, and then I'll come around to the top and clamp that end. So now I've got my rig tied, and like I said, with these clamping floats, you can't reel that float obviously into your rod tip, and so you don't want to leave too much leader. You don't want to fish too deep, or you won't be able to cast it. You know, a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, maybe 4 feet, you can still cast pretty well, but you get above that and you're going to want to use a slip float. Like I said earlier, the great part about fishing a float with a mud minnow is a mud minnow likes to go down to the bottom. That's where they want to live. So if you fish them on a traditional Carolina rig or a knocker rig, they're just going to lay on the bottom. You're not going to get much action from them. But I like to set this, about 6 to 8 inches off of where I believe the bottom's going to be. So that mud minnow, all he's going to be doing is digging, trying to get down to the bottom. So he's going to be causing a lot of commotion and a lot of flashing, and it's going to attract fish from further. So that there is my clamp float rig. The slip float gets a little bit trickier, but this to me is my bread and butter of float fishing. It really works so well and is extremely effective, and there's just so many applications in salt water. It's pretty popular in freshwater, but there's not many guys in saltwater doing this, and it's definitely a tactic that needs to be used more, I believe. The nice thing about this is with a slip float, you can cast it extremely far, and you can fish through an area. So a lot of times what I'll do with these floats is I'll use them as a fish finder rig. As I'm pulling through a creek, through a deep bends, or sitting on a deep bend, I can cast it way out there and let this rig work through the water. So usually when I'm slip floating, I'll put a 12-foot fluorocarbon leader on. 15 pound is my heaviest usually. And I'll go all the way down to 8 pound in the winter when I'm trout fishing with a slip float in the really clear water we get here in North Carolina. So I'll pull 3 arm spans out and cut that off. And obviously, like earlier, this is going to be your joining line. or your joining knot going to your braid, the first thing you're going to do when you buy these Billy Boy bobbers, the slip floats, they're going to come with your actual stopper. So your stopper is a small piece of thread that you're going to feed onto the line and tighten it down. It's a nail knot tied on a small little coffee straw. And what happens is these floats will usually last way longer than these stoppers will. So fill, I believe is how you say it. You can buy extra packs of stoppers and beads, and those are definitely worth having, because sometimes these stoppers will only last an hour or two for me, and I've got to go tie another one on, because once you cinch it down and cut down the tag ends, if it loosens up, it's done. You can't reuse it. So the first step is sliding that stopper on. So you're going to come on the end here. I usually slide it up a few feet. And what you do is you push the straw out towards the bottom end of the line, not up towards your rod tip. This is going to be the end tied to your rod tip. You're going to push that straw out like that. So I've got my nail knot right here. I'm going to throw that straw off that side. And what you do here is you cinch this nail knot down really tight, and then you'll cut the tag ends here. The nice thing about this as a stopper is you can reel it right up into your rod tip, right up onto your spool with absolutely no issues. So once I've got my nail knot cinched down on the line, I'm going to grab my bead. And that bead is actually going to be what stops your float from going above wherever you set your nail knot. I'm going to slide that on here. I'm going to bring it up. And there it is, stopped against the nail knot on the line. My next step is the bobber. So notice that these bobbers are weighted on one side and there's not a weight on the other side. And so you want to slide the unweighted side up to meet that bead and that nail knot. Like so. So now it's stopping on that line. And then your next step, just like the other rig, we're going to tie one of these owner circle hooks on here. I'm going to do that with a 3-turn uni knot as well. And again, any knot that you enjoy or like to use to tie a circle hook or a J hook on for a bait fishing rig, you can use, but I have found over testing that this Mutu owner circle hook is my hands down favorite hook for this rig. I trim that tag end, and then I'm going to drop my split shot on about 4 to 5 inches above the hook. Now you can bite that down, but you also want to use a pair of pliers, which I don't have with me here today, just to clamp it down a little bit more. It's going to stay there longer, but you can slide that around. I don't like to, if I get below 15 pound, which is what I'm using right here, I really don't like to slide the weight much because it damages the leader too much. I'm going to have broken fish off right there where the weight connects. But as you can see, the beautiful thing about this rig is when I reel it up to cast, I can reel it all the way up to there. So you can cast this just like a lure, but then I could set this at 15 feet deep if I wanted to. And so this is going to slide all the way up and stop on that nail knot just like that. So the great thing about the nail knot as a stopper for a float rig is, one, like I said, you can reel it up into the rod tip and cast it out with really no problem at all. And the other great thing is just how quickly and easily you can adjust the depth in which your bobber is going to stop at. So it's stopping right there now. Let's say that's 6 feet, and all of a sudden I'm a little further back in the creek and it goes from 6 to 10 feet deep. I can literally just pinch this nail knot here and just slide it down the line. Be careful because sometimes it will burn your fingers a little bit, but you can slide it down the line, and now I've got it set, a few feet deeper, and I can fish the deeper spots. When I go shallow, I can grab it and slide it down shallow again. And that's just stopping my bobber at a whole different area, and I can fish another depth. It literally takes me 2 seconds to change the depth in which I'm fishing. And the great thing about this is I can sit in a creek on one side, throw it 40 yards across the creek, and just let it drift down that edge of the creek. So I can fish a long section of creek with one cast, with one bait, and really cover that water well. I know if there's a redfish within probably 8 to 10 feet of this bait, as it drifts through, he's going to come over and eat it. When I started fishing with these float rigs, it just upped my bait fishing game by 100%. I was catching more trout, more redfish, and more flounder. So the last thing I want to show y'all is how to actually rig the mud minnow onto these circle hooks. It's very simple. I just want to start underneath the lip here. I've got a Z-Man soft plastic paddle tail to show y'all. But I'm going to start right underneath on the bottom part of their jaw, under their lips, and come up through the top, right in front of their eyes. So it's going to look just like that. I hope that was helpful, and I hope that y'all can use these float rigs and get out in the water and catch more fish.
Hey there, it's Joe Simons, one of the co-founders here at Salt Strong, and have you claimed your free pack of these irresistible Slam Shady paddle tail lures? We designed this lure with over 12,000 serious inshore anglers, including many full-time guides, to go out there and catch more redfish, more speckled trout, more snook, more flounder, more inshore saltwater slams. And if you want a free pack to try out a sample yourself, click down below right now. We have one free pack per angler while supplies last. Click down below right now.